What up? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And look at you. You done stumbled upon little OTB Saints, where we bring you all the latest black and gold coverage.
Who are the Saints going to draft? Who's going to be their quarterback? What does the salary cap look like? All that information and more.
Hope you enjoy it. Like, subscribe. Let's go to the phone lines right now. We got Ross Jackson, host of the Locked On Saints podcast, does a ton with the Locked On Podcast Network as a whole, at Ross Jackson NOLA on Twitter. Ross, what's happening, man? How are we doing today?
Hey, guys. Doing wonderful. How are y'all doing this morning?
Doing quite well. We were just discussing the Saints camp thus far, and I'm going to start with a very broad question here, Ross. When you're scoring it, you're a judge, and you're watching the boxing match between the two sides of the ball, offense, defense. How do you have it scored thus far? Who has the upper hand?
Oh, right now, I would definitely give that to the defense. The defense has been absolutely outstanding for the Saints so far. It doesn't mean that you should push the panic button on the offense. Just kind of the way that I've been saying it is that, look, when you set out to build the NFL's best defense, the downside of that is that your offense has to play against the best defense every single day. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't always work out so well on both sides. But it works out incredibly well in terms of what the Saints have been able to do over on the defensive side. So I would give the defense absolutely that nod for now.
Well, I've always called it the eternal camp paradox, right? Is my offense bad or my defense good? Now, I think if I'm a Saints fan, there's ample evidence that the defense was good, right? They finished top 10 in scoring last year. So, you can at least feel like, yes, you're probably going against one of the NFL's better units here, and so that'll make you better in the end. Plus, beginning of camp, I feel like defense tends to have some advantages. Okay, so the defense has been clearly winning. In what ways have they been winning? Ross I know Marshawn Lattimore is having a great camp. Is it just with shutdown coverage? Is the defensive line winning? Like how have they been accomplishing it?
Yeah, it's been a really, really tight coverage across the board. Marshawn Lattimore is absolutely a part of that. I would include Paulson Adebo in there as well, who I think right now has a big-time stronghold on that CB2 spot.
Really? Okay.
Marshawn. Yeah, I think I would put him ahead on that right now. And then I think the other thing that you're watching, too, is a lot of winning on the defensive line. Now, it's not like an unbearable amount where you get really worried about the Saints offensive line, but it is there. And I think that's a good thing. And I think a big part of the reason why has been because of the mentality that defensive line coach Todd Grantham has brought in. He's brought in a mentality that's a little bit more about making plays. And I think the way that Tono Passanio, one of the Saints defensive ends who's versatile enough to play inside and out, I kind of broke it down for us last week, is that they're kind of being taught, don't worry so much about being right if you have the opportunity to make a play. Because if you can make the play, you were right by making the play. And so I think that it's a lot of those types of mentalities that have really kind of leaned in well for guys who are explosive and who can make plays like Paul Granderson and Peyton Turner, who's really looked to have at least turned the consistency corner so far this offseason. He's looked really good on multiple days and a lot of days in a row, as opposed to last year where we kind of saw him stacking moments. I think it's fair to say he's been stacking days in this year's camp, and that's a good thing for him. And so I think that those two spots in particular, coverage and pass rush, which there's a symbiotic nature between the two of those, that those are the two things that have really kind of stood out as why the Saints defense has been winning thus far.
Well, and yeah, that's great to hear, because if you want to be a top defense in the NFL, coverage and pass rush are going to be the keys to doing so. How in the world did I miss that Todd Grantham's a defensive line coach now? Todd Grantham is maybe the owner of one of the funniest faces in all of just the public. Look at the picture that I just put in the document, boys. This man looks like a human turtle. It's unbelievable. I'm sorry, Ross. I got a little distracted once you learned me that. Ross Jackson NOLA, host of the Locked On Saints podcast. Every day, Ross uploading very valuable, great insight into this New Orleans Saints team, getting you ready for the season. Preseason game, I don't know if you're watching online right now, Ross. Look at that, man. That's a turtle face. 100%, dude. Anyway, Sunday's preseason game coming up against the Chiefs. Dennis Allen talking about how he's planning to play the starters here. From what you've seen in practice, what are you most excited to see now going against another team on Sunday?
I think that this is the opportunity to where, you've watched the offense, you watched the defense win so much, but not necessarily watch the offense struggle. So I think that what I'm most excited to see is kind of what does this offense look like against a defense that doesn't know what it's going to do, right? That hasn't been playing against, or that hasn't been playing against its offense every single day, which I think is one of those things that it's one of the reasons why those joint practices are so exciting, because you finally get to hit somebody else for a change.
True.
Instead of the same guy over and over again. So I think that that's the thing that I'm really looking forward to seeing. And I love that Dennis Allen's going out directly and immediately and putting some of the starters out there, because it's going to give you a really good idea of kind of where they are, and then they can spend the rest of the training camp and the practices leading into those remaining preseason games, kind of tinkering with that and getting those things figured out. So it seems like a good diagnosis opportunity for the Saints offense. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that part for sure.
We've had some conversations that have kind of spoken to the vibe around camp this year, maybe how it's a bit different from the past, or from last year specifically, where maybe last year was like all like kind of a bit more lax, maybe a bit more comfortable, where this year it looks like they're going a little harder. Have you seen that? Is that accurate? Like, how would you interpret just the kind of feeling of camp in year 2 of Dennis Allen as compared to year 1?
Yeah, I would say that there's definitely a different intensity this time. That's not to say that there wasn't an intensity last year, but there certainly wasn't as much intensity as there is this year. I mean, you're hearing, Dennis Allen, getting into players, and, especially when there's like false starts and procedural issues and things like that, which we haven't seen a ton of. We haven't really seen any of that on the first team. We've seen it a couple times, second team, third team, which is kind of to be expected. But, that has not been taken lightly, though. Just because it's the second team, just because it's the third team, just because it's the rookie quarterback or whatever, it doesn't mean that Dennis Allen's just kind of sitting back and going, it's just that's going to happen. No, he has been in those players every single time, and like on top of those players every single time that those things happen. And so you're hearing that from him. You're hearing that from the coaching that's coming from guys like Marcus Robinson, who has that player intensity. Right, he's a former player. Todd Grantham has a lot of that intensity. Doug Marrone has a lot of that intensity.
Yeah.
So you're hearing it from all over the coaching staff on both sides of the ball. And look, Derek Carr has that intensity too. And the players have that intensity. And so they're also holding themselves accountable or each other accountable. Derek Carr is the kind of guy to where if they miss on a route during practice, they're in the training facility after hours, or not after hours, but after the practice is done, reworking that route concept until they feel good about it. And so a lot of that kind of extra work that we didn't see, like the extracurriculars that we didn't see last year, we're seeing a lot of this year.
Ross, so I know Chris Olave has been doing very well. How's our boy Mikey Thomas doing?
Yeah, I think he's coming along. I wouldn't call him 100% yet. I think that he said something in his presser the other day that I really loved, where he was kind of like, I don't really know what 100% is. Like, let me find that out, and I'll let you know when I'm there, kind of. Which I think is a valid point, because he's the only one that knows his body. We don't. And so I think that he's just, one of those guys that's kind of continuing to come along. But I think he'll turn that corner, and he'll be a very good brand of Michael Thomas. I don't think he's going to be 2019 Michael Thomas again. Like, let's just be real.
Yeah.
But he also doesn't have to be. 2019 Michael Thomas didn't have Chris Olave. He didn't have Rashid Shaheed, Juwan Johnson, Boston Morrell, Jimmy Graham, maybe. He didn't have those guys. You know what I mean? They had maybe Ted Ginn Jr. for a little bit, but otherwise you had like Traquan Smith.
Alvin Kamara, right? Like that's
he had Alvin Kamara, right? Yeah, and then you won't even have Alvin Kamara for the first 3 games this year too. So like he's going to get his opportunities, but he's not somebody you're going to have to rely on 100% of the time. So I think he'll get there. But look, he's winning when he's going up against the non-Marshawn Lattimores of the world. That's just how good Marshawn Lattimore has been now.
Who most needs the reps on Sunday out of any position?
Yeah, I think if I were to look at a certain position group,
even a player. Sorry, I mean just any player. Like who do you think most needs some reps on Sunday?
Yeah, I think I would put Trevor Penning there.
Yep, that's exactly where my head was at. Yeah.
Yeah, not to say that he's struggling or doing poorly or anything like that, but like the guy just didn't get a lot of opportunities last year to do real live in-game action. He missed the first 12 games of the season. He played throughout the preseason. And then he got to start that final game of the year. And so really the only times that you've seen him get considerable playing time, the preseason and that final game of the year, it ended with what would have effectively been big-time injuries, or what were big-time injuries, with a dislocated toe first, and then I believe it was the rib sprain second. And so I think you want to see, or whatever that other issue was with this foot. And so I think you want to see him go out there, even not just for the Saints, even not just for the team, but for himself. Go out there, play considerable snaps, and then walk off the field at the end of the game. Like I think that mentally would be very good for him.
Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, host of Locked on Saints podcast. Great daily content, eyes on every practice, every development. Also, the entire Locked On network for whatever team you're a fan of. I know now that it's camp time, content's just pumping out even more insane than normal. Ross, tell everybody what y'all got going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, over on the NFL side, doing a lot of great work. We have a lot of our folks that are there at the training camps, getting firsthand experience, getting firsthand knowledge of what their teams are doing the same thing. A lot of us are doing 2 shows a day. I'm actually publishing my first show of the day now, and then once practice is over, I'll do another show to kind of let you know what's going on afterwards. So the NFL might not allow 2-a-days anymore, but Locked On does, so we're doing them.
Ross, thank you so much, man. You have a great morning. Wow, just amazing black and gold takes right there, Jake.
I don't think I've ever heard any takes that are better than the 2 guys that just gave you that take.
And you can keep getting them by going ahead and liking, subscribing, ringing the bell to get notifications when we post. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next OTB Saints.